is that what he did was deny the cover of Yahweh. Are you following me? Because when a man, his head's covered, it's inferring that the covering is the father himself. And a woman's covering is supposed to be the husband. If it's out of balance, one is not covered, guess what? And if the husband's head's not covered properly, then the wife will have problems submitting to the husband. You see what I'm talking about? Now, when you read this in the Hebrew language, it infers that he intentionally made himself bald in front of Moses and the congregation of Israel as an act of rebellion to show them that he was not going to submit to Yahweh as his covering, which was exactly what Moses was declaring that the children of Israel were supposed to be doing. Can y'all see that? That's not hard, is it? Let's move to the next name. The next one is that of Balak, and I'm sure you remember him. That's one of my favorite individuals in the Scripture, simply because Yahweh has a sense of humor. That's the one where he's riding on a donkey, remember? And the donkey, you know, sometimes you need to listen to the jackass around you. Hello? He's riding on a donkey, and this donkey sees an angel in front of him, and that angel is going to kill Balak. Are y'all hearing me? And the donkey runs off the road. Well, this guy gets him back, and then the donkey's getting closer, and the donkey can see in the spirit realm. You see, some folks around us that we want to denigrate and say they really can't see spiritually. They can see a lot more than some of us can. Hello? And the next thing you find is the donkey runs him into the side of the wall and smashes his leg, and this guy goes to frothing at the mouth, gets off, takes up a stick, and goes to beating this donkey. And then the donkey, go back and read the Torah, speaks to him and says, wait a second, why are you whooping me? Haven't I been yours since day one and been faithful? And now you're beating me? And I'm thinking, first minute he opened his mouth, that's when I would have stopped. Hello? But then again, I think, you know, I've been cut off in heavy traffic. And that urge to pick up a stick and whip the donkey. Because, see, that car is just like riding a donkey. Hello, somebody? The urge to pick up the stick overwhelmed me, and the car could have been talking or not. You see what I'm talking about? That's why we get back to the premise of this teaching tonight. We've got to learn to get this man under control. If we don't, that angel that's going to be in front of us is going to whittle you down to your proper size. His name in Hebrew is Strong's number 1111, and it means to lay waste, to destroy. And it tells you, if you go back and look at where it mentions him in the book, it talks about his father being Zippor, Strong's number 6834. And if you will notice, Zippor is the same name of Moshe's wife, Zipporah. And, of course, the root word of Zipporah, Zippor, is the same as the word for frogs. Remember the plague of frogs, Sephardia? Well, that's the same word. And so, if you start looking at the root of this, the Zadi Pei, which is the root of that word Zippor, infers to overwhelm and to overflow. So there is a connection here between the overwhelming portion of that plague of frogs that you see in Genesis that helped to get the children of Israel out. But there's also a connection to the wife of Moses. Remember, names are prophetic. Am I saying she was plaguing him? I'll leave that for you to decide in a few minutes. But she definitely was, in my opinion. She literally became an overwhelming source that you'll find as we look further that he removed her from him. Are y'all hearing me? Now, the thing that's important for you to see is that Pharaoh decided he wanted one more night with this one. Hello? Are y'all beginning to get a picture connected here? Now, let's look a little bit further at this next individual. The next person's name out of the four is Phinehas, or Phineas, the way you may have been accustomed to call him. His actual, the way you pronounce his name in Hebrew is Pinchas, and it is a combination of pei and the word nakash. The Hebrew word for pei in English is mouth, and of course the nakash on the the latter part of it, the root of it there is 5175. That's the word for brass, but it's also the same word for serpent and divination. And if you know what divination is, it's one who is like a spiritual medium who by divination consults the occult realm, witchcraft and sorcery, if you will. Now, the reason I'm sharing these four names with you is because Yahweh gives you some insight in the expanded definition of these four names regarding what is about to happen in this Torah portion. Now, if you don't take the time to go back and examine them and extrapolate the meaning out of it, then you'll just skim over the surface and you'll miss it. You follow me? So I've given you the basic definition. Hopefully you can remember it. Go back and get the notes if you can't. And I'm going to give you now the expanded definitions that I pulled out to show you what these four names mean. It's implying that not only did Yahweh use them here in the Scriptures at the time that they were living, but they're also living teaching tools for those of us now. Turn to your neighbor and tell them we need to pay attention then. Okay? Basically, what is being said is that Yahweh is going to search out His people. Remember the name Yisro? He will search out His. Yahweh is going to search out His people, calling them to a place of protection and separation. From whom and what? From those who submit themselves to the pagan fallen gods, or we will be overwhelmed by those same pagan gods and their divinations and their omens and signs that belong to the serpent. Did y'all hear that? That's what these four names will tell you. So what exactly, or who exactly, or what role does this individual Jethro play in this particular Torah portion? Well, every bit of the name of Jethro is important because it's a shadow picture of where you and I are today. Like it or not, at one time we were like him outside covenant relationship with the Father. Am I right? Remember his name, the expanded definition of it means the remnant that was left behind, and that Yahweh will search out and find him. Thus, it becomes our duty to also search out and find Yahweh, and in the process, to find out more about this individual called Jethro. Y'all want to look a little bit further? Well, in order to do that, you have to go back to the place where he's first mentioned, and you'll see that in Exodus chapter 3, verse 1, and it explains who this individual is. I almost said Jethro 3:1. Some of y'all would still be looking when I finish later tonight. Exodus 3, verse 1. Now, where's that book of Jethro at? Hello. I'll say it ain't so. Now, Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And we could go into looking at the rest of it. It tells you that Moses led the flock of Jethro to the backside of the desert. But what I want to focus on is the fact that it tells you that Jethro was the father-in-law of Moses and that he was a priest of Midian. Now, Midian was not only the name of a tribal affiliation of a group of people, but it was also the name of a place because that's where those particular people settled. So what I want to do now is look at the word father-in-law in the Hebrew language. It's Strong's number 2859, and it's the word kathan, translated as father-in-law. That's pretty easy to deduce. But it can also mean bridegroom, father-in-law, husband. However, in the Aramaic, it also means to cut off and to circumcise. So now you have to ask yourself, I wonder what kind of a connection there is between this guy named Jethro and circumcision. Well, this gets pretty interesting. It says in the next word we want to look at that he was the priest of Midian. Strong's number 3548 is the word Cohen. Of course, you know it when you're familiar with it. That is the terminology used for those who were parts of the priesthood. Kohanim. Kohen Gadol is the high priest. However, I want you to look at the root of the word Cohen. Remember, you have individual letters, and you have a root stem, and then you have the entire word. If you look at the root stem here, you can see you have a kaf and a he, which forms the word 3541 in Hebrew, ko, which means to point in a specific direction. Remember, Every Hebrew word is a prophetic picture. So what is a priest supposed to do? He's supposed to point you in a specific direction. Hello? Oh, that's what I'm trying to do. Here it is. Point you in the proper direction. That's what the priest does. But in this instance, if you'll notice, there's a noon suffixed or appended to the end of that word. And whenever you see that, it's indicating diminishing. Something has been diminished or belittled, and that's taken place. And so this particular priest, charged with pointing you in the direction of the Father, has actually diminished his role. He's not doing a proper job. Sounds like a lot of folks that stand behind this quote-unquote sacred desk. Are you hearing me? Now, let's look a little further. He was the priest of the household of Midian, the nation of Midian, Strong's number 4080. If you look at the way the Strong's Concordance translates it, now, Strong's is a good basic place to start, but you can go deeper than that. How deep do you want to go? Ezekiel said the waters can be entered into to the level that you would like. If you're satisfied with the ankle, then stick with the King James English. If you want to get out in waters to swim in, the Hebrew is the place to go. Okay? The word Midian, translated as strife, however, again has this two-letter root stem. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, we need to learn Hebrew. Is it hard? No. Is it doable? Yes. The reason that it seems hard is because you don't like change. Change can get uncomfortable. But all you have to do, ask my teacher back there, and she will tell you, look at it and repeat it. Look at it and repeat it. Start writing it down, vocalizing it, and you'll find the more that you do that, the more you'll begin to assimilate it, and it becomes part of you. And before you know it, you're speaking Hebrew word. How many of you have ever heard, and I challenged some last night, you ever heard of the word Bethlehem? Say that with me, Bethlehem. You just spoke Hebrew. You just said Beit, Beth, house, Lechem, house of bread. See, you can speak Hebrew. Amen. How many of you have you ever heard the term when someone say, how's things going? You say, copacetic. You ever heard that in South Mississippi? Well, that is a corruption of the Hebrew phrase, kol beseder. Everything's okay. Everything's fine. It's a Hebrew phrase. So you can speak the Hebrew. You just didn't know it. Are you with me? Now, when you start looking at the Hebrew root here of that word Midian, Strong's number 4055, you have the mem, could have been im. See how close they are? Dalet, which could have been d. M and D, if you add the vowel point, gives you the word mod, not mad, and it's a masculine noun that means clothes, tunic, as in the priestly garments. But it also carries with it the idea of something that has been apportioned or measured. In other words, if I pour you this glass of water, I have measured it to you. I have given you the portion that I want you to have. It's apportioned unto you. Remember this, because this is connected to this name Midian and strife. As you start looking at it, you'll notice that not only is it inferring something that's apportioned, but it also includes the context of wearing curses as a garment. Did you hear what I just said? I don't know if I'd want to dwell in that place, would you? Now, again, you'll notice there's a yod right here, right beside the mem dalet. If you add the yod, it shows personal possession. And it's talking about my garments. Remember, the mem dalet can be clothes, tunic, garments. Well, the yod on it adds it, makes it my garments, while the noon suffix again can infer one more time to make it small, to belittle it. As we look at it, you can then read this expanded definition. Strife was measured as a curse to the Midianites. Why? Because they diminished my priestly garments. My goodness, it sounds like we might be dwelling in Midian after all. Hello? Because we have diminished the priestly garments of the Messiah. Now, remember that the word garment is a euphemistic term for the word flesh, so you could also read this as strife was measured to the Midianites as a curse for diminishing the priestly garment of Messiah's flesh. And we'll stop on that note, go to track 2, leave you with the Thank you for joining back.